It's just Bruce, he don't bite. Hello.
Hey folks, welcome back to my channel. You're probably wondering, what the hell does this guy know anything about being a chef if you haven't seen the channel before? Well, I'm a retired chef. I was a chef for 40 some years. And today I want to talk about who the biggest, most badass chef there ever was. I'm not talking about Gordon Ramsay, because I'm sorry, I don't even like this guy. Seriously, he's one of the chefs that just kind of ruined the whole feeling of wanting to cook for people. It's not like that in real restaurants. I'm here to tell you, it's not like that in real restaurants. Real restaurants have a lot of teamwork, and we don't work for an asshole. Forget about that. You know who else it isn't? It's not Bobby Flay either. I know people think, oh, Bobby Flay's so good. And you know what? He is kind of a nice guy from what I understand. But no, not badass enough. And it's not this guy either. This guy, you may or may know him. He's YouTube famous. I admire the guy. I really do. I admire the guy a lot. I got the chance to meet him in Oklahoma like years and years ago. He's a great guy. He's a great chef. Is he a badass? Absolutely. His name was Cowboy Kent Rollins. You could check him out on YouTube channels. He's still doing videos to this day. He's a hell of a guy. But is he badass enough to be the most badass chef ever? No. What about me? I mean, I said I've been a chef for 40 some years. Am I the most badass chef ever? Not by far. Not compared to the guy we're going to talk about today. Not even close. Let me give you a hint, though. Recently, I have been doing some genealogy and finding out, you know, my family members and stuff like that. And I went back and I found out that I'm related to this person. This is Clara Jennings Hayes. From my side, my Jennings side of the family, of course. I trace my roots back to her. She is a Titanic survivor, and I think that's pretty neat. Obviously, I've never got a chance to meet her. I just found out recently that she's an ancestor. I don't know if you call her a relative or an ancestor. You know, a relative is, to me, is someone that you have been able to talk to and meet in your lifetime. An ancestor is someone who passed before you were born. That's what I think. But anyway, Clara Jennings Hayes is a distant relative on my Jennings side, and she's a Titanic survivor. Now, do you maybe see where I'm going with this? Let's continue. So if you don't know what the Titanic is, wow. Unless you're like really young and haven't studied that in school yet, I'm under the assumption that everybody knows what the Titanic is. Let me just give you a really quick Cliff's Notes version, because I don't want to make this video ridiculously long. It's not supposed to be a history lesson. Well, it kind of is. RMS Titanic, April 1912. Set out to come to New York City, I believe. And it hit an iceberg. And it was supposed to be an unsinkable ship. Well, it sunk. And a lot of people perished. It was a horrible story. You probably know the story, so I'm not going to get any more detail of it. Except for the detail we're about to talk about now. Back to the biggest, baddest chef that ever lived. Now, if you've ever seen the modern Titanic movie, you know, with Rose and Jack and all that stuff, you might remember a chef on the back of the boat taking a swig out of a flask. That is based on a real person. And that person's name is right here, John Charles Joffin. Now, there's been debate about how to pronounce his last name. Some people say Jarkin, some people say Jogan. Joffin is what I think is the right way to spell it. I'm sorry, not spell it, but the right way to say it. I've seen many documentaries and videos. People pronounce it differently all the time. So I'm going to stick with Joffin, because that's what it says to me. And if I'm wrong, John Charles, I'm sorry. Anyway, he was an English-American chef, and he lived from 1878 to 1956. When he died, he was 78 years old. Yeah, okay, just a guy, whatever, he's a chef. Whoop-de-doo. He was a chef on the Olympic, which is the Titanic's sister ship. Now, the reason he ended up on the Titanic is because the Olympic was in for repairs and he still wanted to work. So he put in for the job as chief baker on the Titanic because he wanted to work. I mean, who doesn't want to work? He wanted to work. He wanted that money. So I believe he bumped the actual chief baker on there with seniority or something like that so he could take it. And he became chief baker. And he had 13 bakers under him in his kitchen where he would bake bread, you know, desserts, those kind of things. It wasn't actually the chef cooking the main dishes at that particular time. So, okay, yeah, he's baking away, whatever. He goes to retire and go to bed, and, done for the night. He's in bed sleeping. Well, that's when the iceberg hit. And the iceberg hit, it woke him up. It jarred the ship a little bit. It woke him up. He knew something wasn't right. So he got out of bed and went back to the galley, kitchen, whatever they call it there. And the word of mouth, he heard about the lifeboats being deployed. Well, as soon as he heard about the lifeboats being deployed, he gathered everybody that was working, all the other bakers, got them all together. They took bread up to each bread and some other supplies, food, up to all the lifeboats to make sure all the lifeboats had some bread and stuff in there for them to eat. I don't know what else to call it. And they did. They took all bread to all the lifeboats and everything like that. At 12:30 that night, he headed up to Lifeboat 10. He was in charge of Lifeboat 10. He was the captain of Lifeboat 10. And when he got there, he was trying to get women and children to load aboard the lifeboat, but the women didn't want to go. They felt safer on the Titanic because they had it drilled into their heads that the Titanic was unsinkable. So he actually had to argue with these women. Finally, he just started throwing women and children into the lifeboats, saying, just get in there. He picked them up physically with a few other guys, and they actually threw them into the lifeboats. So after Lifeboat 10 was full with all the people, the women and children that he could get into the lifeboat, it was time for him to take command of the lifeboat. It was supposed to be him and two other seamen to take care of the lifeboat, row it, whatever they do. He ended up getting bumped out of his own lifeboat. Even though he's supposed to be captain of the lifeboat, he got bumped out. There was 3 seamen there, and they bumped him, I guess. I'm guessing, because at this point, he was doing his job, trying to do it diligently. So I'm guessing they bumped him out because he was just a cook. Now, I take that very personally. But it was his duty to be captain of Lifeboat 10, but he got bumped out. So he's like, all right, well. So he said to hell with it. He went back to his cabin. He was like, well, I'm just going to go back to my cabin. And when he got back to his cabin, he just started chugging whiskey. According to his testimony, he just started chugging liquor. But at the time, 1912, it was either the most popular stuff on the Titanic would have been brandy or whiskey. And because I was a chef myself, he probably drank the whiskey. Chefs don't have a lot of money, so they're going to drink the cheaper stuff. So he drank all this. He just drank a whole bunch of whiskey, as much as he could. So after he had his drinks and drank his whiskey, he decided to go back up to deck to do whatever. I don't know if he's going to try to get his boat back or just help out. Don't know what was really in his mind. By then, from what they say, he was pretty slammered. So he goes back up on deck, and the lifeboats has already been lowered. So there was nothing he could do about the lifeboats. They're already lowered. They're in the water. So he decides to go down a deck, and he starts running around grabbing these folding chairs that were all over the Titanic. Started throwing them overboard. And from what they say, it was at least 50 of them that he threw overboard so people could use them as flotation devices, which, was pretty good thinking. And then after he threw a whole bunch of chairs over, he didn't know what to do, so he went back down to his cabin, which was starting to flood with water, and he finished the 2 bottles of liquor that were there. And then he left again with, soaking wet feet. While he was in his cabin drinking for the second time, he started hearing the boat buckle. If you know your history, the Titanic actually broke in half, and then the tail end went up, and then went back down. Well, he heard it to start buckling and cracking. So he hurried up out of his cabin and headed up top deck to go to the starboard side, which is the back of the boat, if you don't know what that means, and rowed out the first up and then bounced, and he described that in his testimony too. And then after it fell the second time, he climbed over the railing and held on for the boat to finally tip up and just start lowering in for its final sinking. In his testimony, he said it was like riding an elevator once he got on standing on the back of the boat. It just went down, and he was standing there, and the boat just went down, and he was just standing there, drunk as a skunk, just standing there. He was actually the last person off the boat into the water. And he claims whenever it went down, just like an elevator, went into the water. He claims he didn't even get his hair wet. He doesn't remember getting his head wet. Now keep in mind, he was completely 3 sheets to the wind. And that's a theory about why he survived. They're thinking, oh, well, maybe because he drank all that alcohol, that's why he survived. I don't know. But still, this man's a badass. And I'm not done yet. So after the boat sank, he sat there and he treaded water for about 2.5 hours. 2 hours. 2 hours. He couldn't feel the cold water because he was so drunk. Now, I can kind of understand that because I have gotten myself really drunk and then going outside in like 20-degree weather and got the mail or whatever, in my jammies because I don't care. And I get that. And then there's other times I freeze my ass off. I kind of get that. So he had enough to drink that he wasn't even feeling the cold when he was in the water. But he's in the water, treading water for about 2 hours. Now, there was a total of 16 lifeboats on the Titanic and 4 collapsibles. And what a collapsible is, it's basically a portable lifeboat that they have stuck somewhere that when they need it, they pop it out. I'm not quite sure what it is, but that's the gist of it. So while he's treading water and started to get a little bit daylight, he saw one of these collapsibles, but it was overturned. There was a few people standing on top of it, a few of the crewmen standing on top of this collapsible. So he swam over to the collapsible. They wouldn't let him on. They said he was going to capsize it. But one of the guys on the boat was a friend to him. They recognized him, and they took his hand and they held him there so he wouldn't, so he wouldn't go under. And he stayed there for a little while, but they wouldn't let him on. He had from what I understand, he had his whole torso out on the boat and his legs were still in the water. And he actually, at that point in his testimony, he said that when he did that, he was colder than he was in the water. Go figure. Like I said, the guy's drunk off his ass. Finally, he let go, and according to his testimony, he almost gave up. He was just like, oh, well, this is the way it's supposed to be. But then another lifeboat came by with the daylight. They could see another lifeboat. He was able to get into that actual lifeboat. And he said the same thing. He was colder out of the water than he was in the water. And that had to be because he was hammered. So a little while longer, and the Carpathia came by. It's another ship. And they rescued all of them. The ones that were in the lifeboats took them all aboard. And he's testified the only thing that was wrong with him, the only problem he was having after he got pulled out of the water is he had swollen feet and they were blue. He didn't even get frostbite. He had some problems with his feet, but a couple days later he was fine. So 2.5 hours, think about it. 2.5 hours treading water. It's a known fact the water was 28 degrees, maybe lower. All those people passed away. He gets shit-faced, and he's like, nope. He's treading water, got on that little boat that I told you about, then got on the other lifeboat. Not to mention he was helping all those people, trying to get people into the boat. Then he got bumped off his own position because he was supposed to originally be in a boat. He got that taken away from him. Still had the common decency to throw a bunch of chairs over the side to help other people. All he wanted to do was help people. Granted, he was shit-faced when he did it, but he just wanted to help people. I don't know if I could do that. They say every man for himself. I'd look after my wife and my kids, of course, but I don't know if I could do it for other people. Other people are just mean. So anyway, I'm not done yet. That's only part of the reason why he's such a badass. In 1886, he continued his career working on ships as a chef. In 1886, he was on the SS Oregon. So yeah, I am taking a minute to correct myself because the SS Oregon, which did sink in 1886, there was another Oregon in 1919, 1920 around. That's the one that he actually was in to sink. Can't go back in time. He sank in the Oregon after the Titanic. And I had to throw that in. I just noticed it during editing. I'm like, wait, 1886, that makes no sense. The research I did is just, but I had the date wrong, and I'm a dumbass for that. But let's continue on and just ignore the whole 1886 thing. And it sunk in Boston Harbor. So that's another shipwreck that he lived through. Boston Harbor wasn't as bad as stuck in the middle of the ocean. It's closer to land. But still, he survived another shipwreck. He worked on a few more ships for a few years. He finally retired in 1944, moved to New Jersey, Paterson, New Jersey. And here's the funny thing. He had a daughter named Rose. Now, I don't know if that has anything to do with the Titanic movie at all. I really don't. I should research that. Now I'm really curious. Leave me something in the comments about that if you know. Don't just speculate. Just if you know. But he had a daughter named Rose. So, yeah. Anyway, December 9th, 1956, he died in the hospital of pneumonia, of all things. All the shipwrecks he's been through and being through the Titanic disaster, he dies of pneumonia. So, I'm sorry, the guy is the biggest, baddest chef I've ever heard of in my life. Surviving the Titanic, then surviving another shipwreck. It's amazing. It's, you know, I'm just happy I can not burn the food I cook. And then there's this guy. But can you imagine him toddling here's my text message. Can you imagine just toddling around the Titanic, all drunk as can be, but still having the thoughts to try to help people the entire time? I mean, that's amazing. It's amazing to me. So, yeah. John Charles, you rock, man. Anyway, like I said, he was in he wasn't in it, but there was an actor portraying him in the Titanic. It was just a very short part, standing on the edge, taking a swig out of his flask, and that was the last you saw of him. There's another movie back from 1958, which was based on some of the testimony. It's called A Night to Remember, where the actor portrayed him as the drunk chef, and it was, I mean, there's nothing comical about the Titanic, but his character was comical, and they actually pointed out the stuff that he actually did. Plus maybe some more that I didn't mention. But if you get a chance, check it out. Anyway, I just thought it was interesting, but in my mind, that is the biggest, baddest chef that has ever been. Ever been. I don't like TV chefs anyway. All right, guys. Hey, thanks for checking me out. Check me out, Jenner Custom Toys on eBay. And like and subscribe if you want to down there. And I'll catch you next time. Bye.
It's just Bruce, he don't bite. Hello.